come all to learn and grow. Welcome to the Village Talk Show. Come all to learn and grow. Welcome to the Village Talk Show. We discuss what people need to know, empowering them to learn and grow. We discuss what people need to know, empowering them to learn and grow. Give praises to Jehovah, from whom all blessing and knowledge will flow. Blessing and knowledge will flow. The Village Talk Show, dedicating to empowering the community to live a healthy, safe, and financially capable life, helping each one of us in realizing our dream at any age, any point, starting from today, day. Success. Come all to learn and grow. Welcome to the Village Talk Show. Come all to learn and grow. Welcome to the Village Talk Show. We discuss what people need to know, empowering them to learn and grow. We discuss what people need to know, empowering them to learn and grow. Success is not spoken, it is done. Success is done. Come on now. The Village Talk Show. Talk Show. The Village Talk Show.
All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
How you doing? Good afternoon, Dr. Bryant. How's everything going?
Fabulous.
Okay, fantabulous. John, how's everything going?
What's up?
I can't. Oh, because you ain't got no mic. That's why I can't hear you.
I can't hear anything.
I can hear you
no
now.
feedback.
I can hear you now.
You can hear me, but I can't hear you. Everything's going well, thank God. I appreciate being here with my villagers this evening.
All right, awesome. I too am so happy to hear from.
I can't hear anything on this mic.
You can't hear anything on that? So we're gonna fix that in a minute. So thank you everyone for joining.
Hey, Dr. Brian, how you doing?
She said fabulous. Right?
I see you smiling. I don't see you saying anything, Dr. Brian.
All right.
I see you smiling. I don't see you saying anything, Dr. Brian.
You know, so
Great. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for watching, joining us, watching, sharing, viewing The Village, subscribing to our YouTube page. And you know, just want to thank all of you for joining us on The Village, where we're dedicated to empowering the community to help to live a healthy, safe, and financially capable life through education, helping each one of us in realizing our dreams at any age, at any point, starting from today. You know, John, I did a community visit as the chair of the board on Sunday. So I went to International Pentecostal City Mission, where I presented to Bishop Dr. Patrona Reed, her son, Pastor Mark Reed, and Bishop Maxwell McDonald, and a few others at the church for their work in the community. And they're celebrating their 67th year. Now, the reason why I brought that up is
67 years.
Yes, the church started there. That church is 67-year anniversary, but overall, this church started around 1930. As I kind of read their bio, what made me impressed was, you know, if any of you are familiar with churches, when you go to church and they're doing.
No, we're not familiar.
No, I know, but everybody. No, honestly, everydy's not.
Maybe you're not.
No, I'm saying everybody's not. So we don't have you know, our Pentecostal listeners or whatever the case is. So they normally,
praise the Lord,
you know, hallelujah, right? But the scripture reading was St. John's 15 verses 1 through 17. St. John's 15 1 through 17. I'm not gonna, as a matter of fact, if Andre get a chance and pull it up, I put it on screen. Right, when I put it on screen, it's all about He abides with me, right? And you know, we sing the song He abides with me every night and every day. You're right, the song. But I just thought that is important that our listeners out there, I know that a lot of us are from listening here in on Gospel JA, but to remember that if you just keep in mind that Jesus abides, God abides with you, you can go a very long way. So, and I'm saying that to say that I also went to the doctor today because I cussed him out. Actually, I cussed out the doctor in my way,
Oh, Jesus.
because I don't, the use of profanity is not something I'm going to use, right? But what happened was I hadn't seen the doctor in over close to a year, right? And in my situation, I feel like you needed to reach out more to the doctor to say whatever the situation is. And he didn't reach out. His office didn't reach out. I had an appointment. The doctor said he had a teleconference and whatever. But as I kept talking to the doctor, I realized that he was amazed, right?
Yeah.
He was amazed at what really was happening.
Say that again.
And because a lot of people, expect different things, right? They expect a different outcome. And so as he was talking, and I remember the scripture that he abides with me, right? And he abides with us. And I'm not telling anybody, although you should have a relationship with the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, like you should have a relationship. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm telling you to think about it.
Okay.
I'm telling you to think about it.
I'm gonna jump in for our first-time listeners. You might be trying to understand why Roderick says he's amazed. He, like I tell him all the time, he's a walking miracle for all of us. When doctors and people say you can't, God say one way, and you have to believe the one who created you. So when people give you time limits, God say forever. So I just celebrate, and I'm every time we fight, every time we have a brother and sister type of love affair over
Y'all
here.
fight?
Yeah, we fight all the time. We fight all the time. We argue all the time. But truly, we love each other dearly. He is a brother.
You ain't say that yesterday.
I didn't speak to Roderick yesterday, so you see how you try to cause.
No, I said you didn't tell me that yesterday. You told me something different, but we'll leave that.
Anyway, I'm focusing on Mr. Daly right now. So Roderick right now is and my mom said to say this to you. It's not lucky.
This is the Village Talk Show, not Roderick's Talk Show.
Well, I'm just using. I know it's the Village Talk Show, but I just had to interject. Why are you being a hater today? What is up with you today?
It comes natural.
Just call me a hater.
Anyway, so this month is Cancer Awareness Month. There's so many different things, but just being a survivor, and I tell him all the time, he is a survivor of cancer, because the stage in which stage 4 cancer, they give you months, they give you days, they give you whatever, but he outbeat what the expectation was because he trusted on the one who created him. And I every time I see you, I just smile, even though sometimes I just want to knock you up. I just smile because the thing is, you went from having not being able to stand to traveling the world right now, going on tours left and right. So it is wonderful to see you. You encourage me, even though my heart is breaking. You encourage me. You encourage me daily.
Oh, brother.
Andre, the camera, Andre. Yeah.
Hater.
Yeah.
All right, let the hater. I want to read the scripture he's talking about. John 15. I'll read verses 3 through 6.
And let it dwell in you.
Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me ye can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch and is withered, and men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burnt. So, Roger, you are not burnt, brother. You are cast. You are the vine. You are the branch. God is the vine.
Mhm.
So, all right, let's move on. That's enough of Roger for today.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. That is awesome. John, I when I walked into the studio, I got a pleasant surprise, right?
Oh, you mean
What's the surprise? What's the surprise, John? There's a
It's a-
big surprise in the
there's a
studio. I
big
was so shocked.
surprise.
What's the surprise, John?
You know what the surprise is?
Nah, you tell me.
Do you know what the surprise is?
No, I don't. Please
Ain't
share.
no
this.
damn surprise.
I don't.
Ain't no damn.
Oh, that is a huge surprise, right? What's the surprise? What's the surprise? What's the surprise?
Dr.
Wait, hold
Brian,
on,
do you
hold
know
on,
the
hold on.
surprise?
Say hi, say hi. Wait. Oh yeah. Come, yeah. I got a surprise for everybody. Hold on. I got a surprise. I got a surprise.
What? Oh my god!
Look. I walked into the studio.
Oh my goodness!
Right.
I'm driving over.
No, you're not welcome. We're right. Our producer Sophia is in studio today. Right, so everybody can say hello to Sophia. She's actually literally in studio, and join us today. There's so many things happening in the news. I want to start off with
one thing. I just want to start with. One thing I want to start. Why has the damn interest rates gone up to 7%, man?
and you
know
can't
what-
even afford to buy a house,
you know
dog.
what kind of impact that's going to have?
I just had a
Does everyone
conversation.
really know the impact that will have?
No, people don't know. I was talking to one of my cousins.
From home ownership.
Foreclosures.
Let's not even get to the point of foreclosure.
Let's not even get
Let's get to the point of buying a house.
home ownership.
Yep.
Auto loans. You talk about credit cards. You're talking about debt. You know, that's just 7%, and some banks are going to 2 points above 7%. So I don't know.
You know, the credit card rate is going to go up. People have to
Yes.
watch that. That's going to be a problem when you really think about it. People have to know about, your debt to income ratio is going to increase significantly. So people have to decrease, not increase, right? Because it's a ratio. So the ratio is going to go more to the debt than it's going to go to the income. Because income never outgain the debt, and people have to understand it. So you actually have to do more to save more and spend less. You can't keep doing the same spending you were doing.
And also the
in the
equity in your homes
It's going to plummet.
is going to drop because this is no longer a seller's market.
Nope.
No,
This is no longer a buyer's market.
This is no longer a buyer's market.
Yeah, and sellers want to get rid of the house. So
Amen, Mo. Thank
Right.
you, Mo. Welcome, Mo. Welcome.
It's
Welcome.
no longer nothing because guess what? Prices are dropping ridiculously.
Now-
For
now-
example,
for the
They
houses, yeah,
Yeah, prices are
are.
dropping.
they
Yeah.
are.
Interest rates are going
Yes,
up.
they
Prices
are.
Come down.
right. So the all of the owners out there, buyer beware, right? I literally thank you for bringing that up. I was actually talking to one of my wife's cousins today, and that's actually the conversation that he and I were having. Like, he's looking for a house in Georgia
Mhm.
where houses were cheaper, and he's
Mhm.
looking for a house down there in Georgia. It's like, yo, the interest rate is kicking my butt, man. The interest rate, because he can't find anything. Because when you have to find both, right? You have to find it affordable and then interest rate, because now your interest rate going to be quadruple sometimes what you pay for the house, which is a problem when after you finish paying all of that money back.
a lot of the different companies were purchasing homes left and right. For example, Zillow and a couple of banks, they were purchasing a whole bunch of homes, and just like now it's going so low. Every day you're seeing the price drop
Hey,
by
Dr.
20,000.
Brian, yeah, it's going low like Kanye West's bank account.
Yes, it
Going
is.
low.
Hey.
It's going low.
Before you even say his bank account is going low, which it is. Did you
Mhm.
hear what happened to Adidas because he left off?
They lost
Their stocks went plummeted after they announced that they are getting rid of Kanye West. I didn't even know that Kanye West was a a sponsor. What do you call them? Not sponsors. We talk about the people that
He was a collaborator with Adidas.
with Adidas.
With the
I-
Gap.
And so many as soon as they made the announcement, the stock market went boo, boo. I mean, not the stock, their stock went down. But he also just closed his school today, over the weekend or
Donda
this
Academy.
week, effective Donda Academy. What was the, I'm gonna say something controversial, and this is me speaking, not the village.
Thank you, Jesus.
Why is every comment that you make that refers to the Jews? I don't know what he said. I don't know what he said.
It was anti-Semitic.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not talking about that. Why is everything that you say that the Jews do not agree with is anti-Semitic? I remember having a conversation.
But Roger, let me throw a curveball at it. On the contrary, why if you say something about people of African Americans, people call you a racist?
Well, you know what? That's good.
And the point.
I don't think so. I think
No.
blacks are
No,
far more
No,
forgiving,
No.
both
and they
ways.
shouldn't be.
It's not about forgiving. If you see, this is the point where we talk about cancel culture.
Well, that's true too.
Listen, you can never have. Everybody talks about freedom of speech until you feel it offends you.
Yes.
Once you feel it offends you, at that point in time, people want to cancel, and it's the point of let's have a conversation. What's going on? Because this young man,
Which one? You talking about Kanye?
Kanye West. When Kanye West was making Adidas, The Gap, Balenciaga, making all this money, they loved him. And he makes these comments, which he should
What
not
was the
make
comment?
these
I don't even know what the comment was.
comments. Comments are anti-Semitic. It's disparaging. He doesn't need to make those
Oh, it
comments.
was a turbo comment. Okay.
He does not need to make those comments. But the point is, you have a young man here who has a mental health issue.
And Kanye?
Kanye has a mental,
Yes, he had a couple. Yeah.
Oh
wow.
So instead of disowning him, we need to find out what's going on with this young man. This is we as
You're only
as good
as you're green.
As long as you can produce
Green. Yep.
green.
Green. Yep.
But once you say something controversial, everybody's ready to leave you. But before we do that, what's going on with this young man? He's been acting. He hasn't been acting normal for months, for a long period of time.
Yeah. More than once.
Sometimes you need to just grab this young man and try to talk to, irrespective of something he can't. But there's some people he looks up to, his children or whatever it is. Dad, let's have a conversation. Or his ex-wife, Miss Kardashian. You know what? Instead of just staying on the periphery, you need to go embrace this young man, because he is basically screaming, saying, "I need help."
And I think him and Kim, like what you're talking about in terms of people, I think both of them are often cry out.
Ever since he lost his mother,
Yeah. That's been it.
he has been
trauma after trauma.
and this could be triggering.
I'm wondering.
He needs to. Everybody thinks this young man is screaming out. Everybody thinks he's making these comments. He's screaming out. He's asking somebody come in and help me. Everybody, one thing to cut him off, but there's another thing to embrace this young man and find out what's going on with him. There's something going on with him. Something happens. He commits suicide. Everybody said, "Oh, he was good. We should have, could have, but we didn't."
But we didn't. We did was we chastised.
It is an intervention by all those performers, all those artists. It is time to intervene and grab this young man up and talk to him. Have a conversation with him about his behavior.
Yeah,
it is not only unacceptable, but it's alarming.
Yeah. I think even more so is I'm wondering, John, we as blacks, right?
I ain't black, brother.
I feel you. I don't like to use the word black either, but
I'm brown skin.
Right. We as brown skin America, I'll take that. We as a shade of brown in America, right? A shade of brown in America, right? We don't go to the doctor. I'm wondering, even at his affluent level, right? I'm wondering, even at his affluent level, does it still reach that high that we are afraid to go to the doctor? It's funny because I was having a conversation also with somebody, and we were talking about a family therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, do we really believe that there's nothing wrong with us? You understand what I'm saying? And not go to the doctor, because a lot of us don't want to go and seek psychiatric mental, because we can't see, unless the person is really acting really silly, we can't really see mental health and mental health.
I think he had one
It's a cultural thing.
place before.
He's
For
definitely-
I think he did when he was married to his wife. He they did put him in a place for a little bit so that he can get some treatment. And unfortunately, he needs more. He definitely needs more. Like you said, more counseling, more intervention,
He
more
needs
everything.
intervention, Doc. Instead
Yeah,
of everybody cutting him off and
yeah.
controlling him and canceling him, they need to come together and embrace this young man and bring him in and find out what's going on. There's something going on with him.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Monet, I think
Oh, no, you're right.
I think you're right. People are crying out loud. I think they're crying out loud. No one's listening. I would only disagree with the no one is listening and put no one is hearing. And I think the difference between listening and hearing for me is listening means you're talking. I listen to you talk or what, but hearing you means I'm identifying with a situation that needs to be addressed. And I don't think a lot of people are really truly addressing, yes, I know there's a mental health issue. I know that there's that leads to it, but I listen to it all the time. You can hear it all of it. I listen. The question is, are you hearing that there's a problem in this? And I know factually, as a person of color, it's hard to even find a psychiatrist who is black. Not that there's none, but it's even hard to find one that is black when you look at identified doctors. You go look. It's almost, I don't even know. I'm not going to say impossible. I'm going to say that the volume of black psychiatrists are extremely low. Not that they're none, but it's low when you compare it to others and other races, right? So, to me, that's a problem. And sad to know what's going on in school. And he's a billionaire, right? He's a billionaire.
He
So
was a billionaire.
yeah, well, he was a billionaire, right? But at this point,
Yeah, and like
money doesn't solve all.
you got to look at trends. 1 minute you're running for president, 1 minute you're wearing white lives matter, the next minute you're saying, hey, this crazy stuff. So there is definitely a disconnect, and no one is seeing that because, hey, when you're famous, you could do whatever. But
People
when
follow,
you're
people
famous,
follow green, like John said, they're following the green. Not,
yeah.
and to me, you can't just follow the green. The other thing that I want to touch on right here in one thing that I want to talk about immediately, because it's going to lead us right into our topic for the day for our guests, is the violence that's happening overall. And then we're going to segue into what the topic is. But there's so much violence going on, school shootings, subway shooting. I just read on my way in. The young man was laid to rest today. The paraprofessional that was shot in front of the school. A couple of weeks ago, he was laid to rest today. The ceremony was at CCC, and thank God, his parents, his mother, donated his organs to 6 different people to save their lives. So even in death, he saved lives. And my heart goes out to the family. But the violence in our community, it's in fairness to Adams and Kathy Hochul. They're not.
Was here today,
right? They're not the cause of the violence. We are the cause of the violence. We are the one doing the violence. Whether it's what John just spoke about, with mental health,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's what our guests can talk about with domestic violence, they're not telling us, like in the insurrection, to go out and produce violence. And the other thing that I want to say, which people hate when I say it, majority of the violence are happening within our own Black community.
Mm-hmm.
The majority, not all, but the murders, the chaos, the killings in New York City, that at least that is happening. So we need to start addressing ourselves about our own violent nature.
Roger, just to jump in, it's just like, on Reverend Sharpton's show on Sunday, he always talks about the man in the mirror or the person in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And that's and it's you. We need to look at ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have an honest conversation with ourselves that who is the root cause of the crime in our community? It ain't the police officers, the white police officers, the police brutality. We are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Until we can acknowledge that we're going to keep making excuses, we need to
And
come
be
together.
blamers.
We need to come together as a family, call a spade, and we need to do something about it. We can't tolerate it anymore.
And
We continue to lose generation upon generation
Mm-hmm.
generation of the senseless violence that is going on in our communities.
you know,
When are we going to finally wake up?
just on my way in, John, I got a message, right, that 2 people got shot in my old neighborhood.
East
Right.
New York.
No, Brownsville.
Why
Yeah,
Why you gotta say it?
sorry, Brownsville earlier this morning.
In Brownsville, right?
Brownsville.
On
One
Stroud
died.
Street, right? One died and one, 12 shots taken to Brookdale Hospital. It's in our community.
Baba, you're right. Baba. Hold on. I want to
Go ahead,
acknowledge
go ahead.
Baba. The comment you're making. You are looking at the most important African artist of this time who is walking in his divine space. Kanye is forcing all of us to take a position. That's deep. Think about it. Little, just think about it. Thank you, Baba.
So I'm just sharing something with John, which I didn't. I don't know if I shared it with our group, and they're talking about the different gangs within our community. 7-3, the 7-3-7-5-6-7, right? And these are all primarily Black Caribbean Latino districts, right? So when they look at these districts, and I mean, you have, for example, in the 73rd precinct right alone, we have let me count them out. 73rd, we have 1 Loot Gang, Brownsville Fresh Gang. We have Crips, all right, 2.3 Crips Woo, Wave Gang Woo, Nuki Gang, Hood Star Gang, that's 6. Young Gunners, 7. Brownsville Money Gang, 8. Crips G Stone Woo, 9. Lot Avenue, 73rd Get Gap, or Get Quap. I don't even know how to read that. Get Quap Family, 9. Stone Crips, 10. Blood Brim Hats, 11. Crew 816, 12. Folk, 73rd, 9. $1 Million Family, 10. No, I think I passed 10 already, right? I think I repeated the number. I think I'm about 11 or 12. Loud Boys Family, that's 12. Move in Silence, 13. Only My Brothers, 14. Focus on Paper, 15. Bully Gang, 16. 73rd, Only the Guys. What's that? 18. Right? So 18 gangs in one community. 18.
That's Central Brooklyn.
Right?
Central
And
Brooklyn.
then the other part of, because 73 covers Ocean Hill, Brownsville, parts of East New York. And then the 75th, I'm not even going to read that number because it's too many at this point, and I don't want to go through that. So if anybody want the list, do reach out. We could always send it out, and so people to look. And they're like streets, like couple streets. Like I got the text message about the carjacking with 3 people have done over 20 carjackings already in the Bronx.
What about the bus in Queens that got hijacked?
Yeah, it got hijacked today. The MTA bus that got hijacked, and eventually crashed. You know, this violence, it's us. It's not them, right? You know, there are a couple of things that we're looking at this month, John. One of them is Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Mhm.
You know, it's men. You know, personally, I think men suffered from more than women.
Yeah, boy, abuse.
Right, men.
Abuse from them women.
But
Abuse.
generationally, men have been taught, right? Men have been taught not to say nothing, right? You're a man, and when your wife abuses you, your girlfriend abuses you, you got to take it like a man, you know. So domestic violence, you know, just for the men out there, you know, domestic violence is not always physical, right? It's supposed to be mental too. And that also, and on the flip side, in all seriousness, on both sides of the coin, right? I want to make sure that for me, and when my guest comes on, we'll talk about it. I always say there's a difference between fighting and abuse. Because a man hits a woman or a woman hits a man, does make it abuse, right? Fighting is fighting. So if you put your fists up and say you're going to fight, whether you're male or female, you're fighting. You should not be in a relationship that you're physically fighting. That don't, right? That doesn't even make sense, right? I just like to fight. I hate when I hear that. I like to fight. That's one of those. So you're going to be in an abusive relationship because you like to fight.
Andre, stop abusing us. Stop abusing us, Andre, and tell us to
Yeah,
move on. Stop
abuse is
abusing us, Andre.
abuse is right. Yeah, it's mental. Abuse is mental, verbal and physical. Huh?
The expert is waiting.
Yeah, the expert is waiting. You know, so you know, this what I said was the lens to our violence. So some of the violence that's happening within our own city, domestic
Brother, if
violence.
you don't go to our guest speaker, there's gonna be some violence.
Right. Right. Well, you know, one of the highest calls
You
for
know?
NYPD is domestic violence. Welcome to the show, Miss Griffith. How are you?
Hi, great. How are you all?
Thank you, Miss Griffin. We're blessed.
Yes.
I was expecting purple, Miss.
I know. And I wanted to wear my purple, but I wore it earlier this week. And I thought about it. I was like, where's my purple?
Oh, you only have one purple?
And you know,
Ignore him.
Ignore me. Ignore me,
purples.
D. Ignore me.
Well, honestly,
Ignore him.
this pandemic weight has got me, so I'm gonna get rid of the weight and get back into all my purples. So that's
Oh, I feel you. We all have pandemic weight. I went to
we're
the
gonna blame it on the pandemic weight.
I went to the doctor today and I gained
Speak for
12
yourself.
pounds.
Speak for
So-
Yeah.
yourself.
My doctor
Yourself
said you
with
got to
that
lose this
weight.
pandemic weight. Come on,
Oh.
we're getting out of the pandemic. So I'm
No.
going to lose it and wear my purple.
I feel you.
Fabulous. Don't worry. You look fabulous.
Thank you.
So, Ms.
I
Griffin,
know.
you can take a moment to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yes.
My name is Dee Griffin, and I'm a news anchor and reporter at WJBF News Channel 6 in Augusta, Georgia. And I am also a survivor of domestic violence and an advocate against domestic violence.
That is an awesome. So I got to ask you, what is it? I got to go back to the anchor part because I see you with all your news thing right behind you. How does it feel to be on the other side of the screen?
Oh, it's great. It's what I've wanted to do since I was 5 years old. My grandmother, I always tell the story, you know, being in the South and everything, she had to drop out of school after 8th grade and tend to the farm and all, just like a lot of my older family members. But she always took the newspaper and she always watched the news. And specifically on the weekends, I would sit with her and watch the news. And she watched Max Robinson, telling my age here, on ABC News, who is the
I don't even know who Max Robinson is.
yeah, his first black male anchor, you know, black period, on network news. And so I used to watch him, and I had a little crush on him at 5 years old. But I also noticed that
It sounds like you still have one.
well, yeah, rest in peace. But you know, he was always in a different location. And so when I would watch him, I would notice that he was always in these fascinating places during the week, but he would always go back to I think he was out of DC during the weekends, but he had this big afro. And we had the TV, the big TV on the floor that didn't work for some reason. I don't know why it didn't, but we had a small TV on top. And I would try to see to make sure when they did that push that his afro would fit in there. But I would also love to be like him. And I would get a pencil and use that as my microphone. And so, you know, my grandmother always said, whatever you want to be in life, you can be that. And she knew I loved watching the news with her. And that's what I wanted to do.
Your grandmother was totally correct. You can be whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
I agree with you. This month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and for people to be aware, you are a survivor. So men and women don't speak about their experiences when it comes to abuse, right? We stay silent. We don't, and you know, I want to digress a little bit and say, like, even when I sent out for today for the topic that we're talking about, people don't feel comfortable in talking about it. So for others, knowing their story, how it can become a tale of empowerment, may help other women to get out, right, of their abusive circumstance. Tell us about your journey and how, when you decide to be a speaker, journalist against DV to empower others. And talk about one thing. I mean, I joked a little bit, and not, you know, I was joking a little bit with the men and women thing, but it does really happen amongst both male and female. Tell us a little bit about your start and why this is important to you.
Okay, well, I've been a journalist for more than 20 years, and I worked in different markets, mostly in the South and East. You know, worked here in Georgia. I worked in Mississippi, Georgia. I worked in Hartford, Connecticut, Kansas City, Missouri, and I was in Memphis, Tennessee when I met my ex-husband. And we fell in love, you know, met through his church, his pastor, and, you know, he seemed like a really good man of God. And you know,
the devil.
You said it.
My friend Ija I know. I already know what Empress Ija. I'm waiting for her comment. Yeah,
you know what she's saying. And so he was a Prince Charming, and I had committed to a life of abstinence for many years. And as I tell people, you know, I lost out on an NFL player, NBA player, all of this, great lawyers and everything, doctors, because I wasn't having sex. But this guy wanted to take the journey with me, and I thought that, okay, this is the man that God has sent for me to be my Boaz in the Bible. And so we started courting, but he had moved from Memphis to Boston to be a headmaster of a school. So our dating was long distance, and we got engaged. And so from the time we started dating to the wedding was 14 months. And so we weren't together, you know, all the time. We saw each other a couple of times a month or whatnot. So you really, now in hindsight, you really can't tell that much about a person unless, you know, you have great insight, or your circles. I always said our circles didn't.
You remained from being abstinent and just.
No, just having.
Leave me alone. I'm just messing. By the way, D, this is me. I you know, levity. I love
common friends, common people, and people you can trust that can speak up.
Right, and that's the thing is I learned from that was our circles did not touch, and so I did not have those friends who were going to tell me really who he was, and so that was a problem, and I learned that valuable lesson from that as well. But excuse me. When we were dating, we decided, since, you know, we were abstinent and everything, that, you know, God was going to bless us, and we were going to start, you know, trying to have a baby. He really wanted to start trying immediately. I was like, well, let's wait a year. He was like, you're getting older, so let's go ahead and try to start having a baby. And sure enough, got married, and boom, got pregnant. So I was still living in Memphis, and he was encouraging me to move up to be with him. And things at work were a little dicey, but, you know, nothing out of the normal whatnot. But he saw it as a sign that God wants me to move up there with him. So we got married in August, and November, I moved up, like November 5th or 6th, I moved up to Boston. And by the end of November, I was living at a hotel. I moved into a Marriott hotel because we had our first big major marital fight, and he was in my face calling me the N-word. And for a little background,
Let me run that back.
November
Move that from
Yeah.
November 5th, and you in the hotel.
in a month.
by the end of right after Thanksgiving.
Wait. When you guys got married, you guys were living in separate places as well?
No, we weren't. I was in Memphis still because we got married in August, and I was still working in Memphis, and he was encouraging me to move to be with him. And that's when I moved to be with him after 3 months, because I was newly pregnant as well. So I was like, okay, I need to be obedient and be with my man. You know, this is the man God gave me, you know. So he called me the N-word, was in my face and pointing and all this. And I wasn't used to that because it's a little background. I grew up here in the South. I came from a 2-parent home. My father was military, so much so my father was old school military, Buffalo soldier. He was in the last regiment of the Buffalo Soldiers. So he was very protective of me and my sister and my mom. And so we were raised in Catholic schools. I went to college at HBCU, Fisk University in Nashville. And then I went and got my master's degree at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. So I'm giving this background. This is the background I came from. So it was no, you know, in my house, it was no N-word, no. So, you know,
I get you. I understand that. I totally get that.
There was no N-word.
you know, I'm like, oh my God, you know, what do I do?
There was discipline.
Yeah.
There was structure.
Right.
And there was no taking crap too.
Right. And my dad
was love.
And there
from
was love, right?
Yeah.
And there were expectations of how you proceeded in life and how you carried yourself.
Yes.
And, you know, the pearls, and you know, we were my daddy.
You should have whooped that behind.
Every time, everything.
Well, I kept it a secret because it's embarrassing. I had this big Southern wedding, and now, you know, you have these problems. I confided in one guy I had met years before in Memphis, but he lived in Atlanta. And I confided in him when I, you know, had left my husband. And I said, you know, something's not right. And he said, it's not right. You don't need to put up with this. And so I thought as well, you know, maybe this was the enemy getting into my marriage. So I deleted that guy's phone number because I thought maybe he was trying to mess up my marriage or whatnot. But he was right. I didn't need to put up with that. After a couple of days, I did like most victims. You know, I let my ex-husband talk me into coming back. He blamed me for everything. He berated me, but then he said, you know, we need to work on our marriage. And this is just, you know, newlywed jitters per se. And I went back to him, and that was the first time I left. I left several times. And one time I was 7 months pregnant, and he pushed me into a wall. And I ran to this closet I had, this walk-in closet in our apartment, and I hid there on the floor, cradling my stomach, protecting my son and talking to my son. And I would always talk to my stomach and say, I'm going to make it all right. I'm going to protect you, and we're going to get out of this. And so I called my cousin back here in Georgia, Pokey, and Pokey was like, no.
That's right. That ain't happening.
No.
And I didn't say, wait, I'm sorry. Did you say Pokey?
Pokey. We have a Pokey, we have an FD, we have a DJ.
Okay, I got you.
And so Pokey was like, we coming up there. And so
That's right. That's how we roll.
That's exactly
roll.
that's exactly what I heard too when you said Pokey.
I was afraid. I didn't know if Pokey was coming up there with a person or his Glock. I didn't want him to get in trouble. So, you know, I was like, when he said we, is like he and, you know, Smith and Wesson. Right. So I didn't want to get him in trouble. So I didn't even take phone calls from him anymore. I did leave to go stay with a friend from Memphis who actually lived up there. She let me stay on her sofa. And I didn't take calls from my cousin because I was A, so embarrassed that I called him with this. And B, I was like, I didn't want him to come and get in trouble. So I just put up with it. And again, I went back to my ex-husband. For one thing is he had tickets that we were supposed to go to see Janet Jackson, and I wanted to go see Janet Jackson.
He bribed you.
But then it turns out he gave away the tickets and to torture me.
He lied to bring you back here.
Yeah, I was ready. I want to see Janet. That's my girl. So I missed seeing Janet Jackson that time. But you know, things we built back up, and then they got bad again when I was 8 months pregnant. But this was right before I was coming home for my baby shower. So we had a big falling out, and we were in an argument or whatnot when I was here in Georgia for my baby shower. And I was scared listening to his tone. I felt deep down it's this, when I leave to go back, this may be my last time coming home. So my sister and mom took me to the airport in Atlanta. And right before we got to the TSA check-in, I said goodbye and everything. And they were walking off, and I turned and I said, hey, wait. And I went, you know, coming toward them. And I said, look, if anything happens to me, fight for this baby. You fight for him. Okay. You fight for this baby. I don't care what happens. I said, Mom, at your house, I have a whole list in my room of phone numbers. I have all my passwords to my credit cards, my bank account, everything. Fight for this baby. I also had made, an escape plan. My uncle and aunt had a home for 30 years on Martha's Vineyard. So I talked to my aunt, and we made a pact that if something happened while I was in Boston, I could get over to the ferry at Woods Hole and I could contact police. They would prevent him from coming over on the ferry because, you know, the vineyard, you only have a couple ways in and out. And so I could get over there for safety with the baby. And if the baby had been born by then, you know, I had packed everything. I knew how to get out quickly and try to get there because I didn't want to go to their house in Connecticut because he knew where to find me. So, and I didn't want to put them in danger either. So I had all these safety plans, and, you know, because I thought this was going to be it. When I go back, if we have another fight, this is it. So sure enough, I went back, but my mom came for my son's birth in May. And before she came, if you're from the South and you know people from the South, we clean meticulously when the queen mother is coming. I'm talking about on the knees, scrubbing the baseboards. You got to have everything, you know, all the dishes clean, all the silverware polished.
It's not just the South.
Okay, good.
From the Caribbean. My mom is coming. She's cleaning. I know.
Right. Well, I was like, I don't want her to come and say, you have a dirty house. So he saw me doing this, and he's like, why are you doing all of this? I'm like, my mom is coming. Oh, it's got to be right. Yeah. And so then also I realized I was in that nesting period that women go through before they give birth. So that was part of it. Well, she came, and, you know, she was there, and she noticed the tension too. But she said, you know, you're going to be okay. You're going to make it out or whatnot. Well, she did leave after the baby was born. And then his mother was coming when my baby was 5 weeks old. And he was starting to try to clean and do like I was doing. He didn't know what to do. So, and that's how I lived. You know, he was picking lint. I could see him like standing like, what do I do? And he didn't ask me like for help or anything. He was like picking lint or something off the sofa. And I laughed. I said, you didn't do this when my mother came. And I laughed just like that. Next thing I know, it was in the morning. He took my lapel of my robe and slung me. And then,
wow.
Right. He just went off, and I saw just this blank look in his eyes. And then he pulled me close to him after he had slung me around. And I just kept asking, what is wrong? What is wrong? What did I do? He said, I want a kiss. And he pulled me in and he kissed me.
He's crazy.
And I was like, okay, just go along with what he wants. And I was like, what did I do? I'm sorry. And I was trying to get away. And that led to just a beat down. And so bad that we had a stainless steel refrigerator, and he punched to punch me. And I heard something say duck, just like a voice, duck. And I ducked. And then he punched where my face had been, my eye had been. And he punched it twice. And I was able to duck down the second time. And also during this time, you know, my baby was over by the TV in his swing, and I kept looking, and, you know, he's 5 weeks old, and I kept thinking, how long is this?
Wait, hold on. Your first baby was 5 weeks old.
And I only have one. That one and done. That was enough for me.
No, I thought you said you were pregnant, but you said his mother was coming after babies for
right. Yeah, he was 5 weeks at this point. My mom had just left, and I had an emergency C-section, and during the beating, he punched me in the stomach. And so I was over.
I'm sorry. He punched you in the stomach.
Yes.
Because obviously, man, if you, I don't even know to explain it to you, but just to say that you know, it's right below. Oh my, wow. And he punched you in.
Yeah, because he had me pinned against the refrigerator.
Right.
So I was able to duck to avoid the fist.
Is he still alive?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Really, Dr. Bryant.
I just want to know.
Yeah.
I just
Oh yeah, oh yeah. He's a doctor as well. He's a PhD as well.
Mm.
Well, you know, I want to,
No.
because I wanted to go back and ask.
Finish, D? Can you finish?
Okay, so my son was over. I could see him, you know, as he had me pinned and he had my neck because I wouldn't just stop crying and I was yelling out for help. And so he was trying to stop me. And the tighter he would squeeze, the more I would go up on my toes. And I just zeroed in on my son to keep me alive. I was just focusing on him, just swinging. And I was wondering, how long is this going on? So I was looking at the TV. Wayne Brady's Let's Make a Deal was on, and then it was going into The Price is Right. So I'm like, this has been going on for like 30 minutes. It can't continue. It can't continue. But I was just, I don't know why, even looking back now, why was I so concerned with the time? I don't know. And I guess that was the reporter in me. I wasn't working at the time, but I still had that journalist mind. What time? You know, I was the details. So no one was coming. And I just kept thinking, I'm yelling, I'm screaming, no one's coming. And so finally, I remembered an Oprah episode where a woman had been kidnapped and she had 911. She had called 911 with her phone and she started detailing the streets as she passed. So I started detailing what was happening to me. And I said, why did you punch me? Please stop. And I was screaming. And I said, you know, why are you holding me against my will? He wouldn't let me go. So that went on for a while and I kept detailing. And finally, he was just like, shut the F up. You know, he just kept telling me, shut the F up. And so he pulled me back toward the middle of the kitchen and pulled me tight. And he was holding on to me. And I heard a voice again say, because I was screaming out for my grandparents. I believe in talking to your ancestors and people, you know, and I swear that's who was telling me to, you know, duck. And so I heard bite him. I just heard it. I'm like, I'm not a fighter. I'm not, my family will tell you, she doesn't know how to fight. So I clamped down on his shoulder and he released me. I ran to the room and I got my phone and I punched the number, the key for my sister, and I put the phone in my pocket and she heard the rest. And then there was a knock at the door and he was, you know, pretty much saying, don't you say a word. Don't you say anything. What this and this and that. And so he went to open the door and I was right behind him and there were the police and I like bolted for the door. And, you know, they kept me out in the hall. Then I realized my baby's in there and I was like, I've got to get to my baby. So the police report rather was saying something like I was erratic or whatever. I can't remember the words. I have the police report still, but I'm like, yeah, I would be erratic because this joker just beat me down. So, there was an officer who came to talk to me and he was, you know, telling me that I had choices to make and that, you know, I had a choice to stay in this kind of relationship or I had a choice to get my son and make a better way for him. And that dawned on me and I kept saying, I'm not used to being on this side of the story. And he kept saying, what do you mean? I said, I'm just not used to being on this side of the story. And he said, what do you do for a living? And I said, I am a reporter, a journalist. And I was just so confused and I had lost myself, obviously. So they arrested my ex-husband. And then a friend of mine came and stayed with me that night. My mom and sister, my sister was on the phone that whole time and I could hear her, Dee Dee. She was making plans. She was on Delta.com getting flight arrangements for herself and my mom. They arrived the next morning. And when they arrived and I picked them up from the airport and my friend Nicole was with me and my sister was like, I'll give you 4 hours. I'm like, for what? How long are y'all staying? She's like, I'll give you 4 hours to get all your stuff.
And get out.
And we going. I was like, where are we going? She says, home. I said, well, I'm driving us home now. She said, to Georgia. And my sister's one of those, you don't play with her. When she says something, that's it. You know, my big sister's like, I can mess with my sister. You can't mess with my sister. So
where was Pookie? Where was Pookie?
Pokey didn't know about this at that time. I don't think I did. I was embarrassed to call Pokey again. And he did find out after I got back home and everything. But
now, wait, D, look at this comment. Look at it. As soon as Dr. Bryant asked you, look. You know,
If
yeah,
y'all
it's a very serious. I know we
Mhm.
show, shine a little light on it with a little jest, because it. I think my mind is going
right.
right, and it's very sad. So I'm
Oh,
glad
you
that we're
haven't heard
able
the
to do
worst part.
a little bit of levity to it.
There's
You
more.
It's a serious
Yeah, you
situation.
haven't heard the worst part.
There's
Wow,
more to
there's
this.
Mhm.
Let
You know,
her
Wow.
finish, please.
I
let her
was
finish.
I was a typical victim who wanted, my family together. I was lying to, I tried to stay in the house as much as possible because I was embarrassed once we got back home to Georgia. And when I did go out to get something for the baby or whatnot, because we had to set up at home, everything that I had, I needed everything for the baby. So I would lie about why I was here. I would make up lies. So then it came to the point where I was like, I've got to fight for my marriage. So I went back to try to fight for my marriage. And he was not having it because my sister and I flew back up with the baby to go to court, and I wouldn't drop the charge against him. And Massachusetts is one state that has an affidavit. I don't know if they still have it, but the victim can sign off and have the charges dropped if you've worked on reconciliation, you've gone to counseling, all this stuff. We had not gone through all of that. And as a matter of fact, I found out he had been cheating on me with a young woman back in Memphis who was like 20 or 21 years old. And so they were having an affair or whatnot. So, I was fussing and not fussing, but crying and begging, asking him to, let's work this out. We have this baby. He didn't make any effort to come see our son. Then he filed for divorce because I didn't have the money to do it or whatnot. So he filed for divorce. He was still working. He was a headmaster. And remember, I quit my job.
Out of school.
Right, in Boston. So remember, I quit my job to come, be with him. And I didn't get a job in Boston. So because I was pregnant. So he filed for divorce or whatnot. And we had a guardian ad litem, who they're the mediators. They handle situations when there are children involved. Well, he never wanted to
represent your child. The guardian
Right. And he never wanted to see our son. He did come to one hearing out of the whole divorce proceedings, and he saw my son for just a few minutes, maybe 30 minutes. I still have a picture of that day. And it was just very awkward. My son didn't know who he was. My son, he was right about one maybe, but he just didn't want anything to do with him. And then he told his attorney he didn't want anything to do with that child. He wanted very little to do with that child. So I talked with my attorney, and she had just had a client who passed away, and this was a similar situation. And that night of the funeral, the estranged father came and got the child and took the child. I didn't want that for my baby, because if something happened to me, I wanted my mom and sister, my family, to raise my baby. I didn't want him to have to go to some stranger. So I said, what could we do? And she said, there's termination of rights because he doesn't have an interest in the child. And this is pretty much abandonment. So, my attorney and his attorney talked. They drew up papers. He signed. His attorney said he signed really quickly. There was no second thought. So he terminated his rights to our son. He didn't even fight it. He terminated rights to our son. Mm-hmm. And then we found out his mistress was pregnant with 2 kids, twins.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the worst part. He terminated rights, but he's a principal of a school in Memphis, taking care of children, but he doesn't take care of his son. No child support, no nothing. But as the judge told us, he's a danger to my son. And so my son,
So it's the best thing that happened.
How old is your son now?
he's 11. He's 11 and a half. Mm-hmm.
So,
D, I commend you for what you tried to do to keep your family together and the composure that you had. And you're lucky you didn't have brothers, because I tell you, he would have.
Pokey though.
He would have.
Pokey.
He would have wished he would have wished he had Pokey.
Yeah,
what I would have done was far worse.
Yeah, my cousin DJ, he put it on Facebook. He said, let that joker cross state lines. Let him cross. Come on to Georgia and see what happens. But, like my dad, we didn't tell him until we got below Virginia, and it was Father's Day. He called my sister to say thank you for the card that she sent him, and he was about to call me, and she said, oh, hold on. and she
He
put
knew
me
something
on.
was wrong. Mhm.
Yeah, and he was like, Dee Dee, and I just started crying. He was like, "Where's my grandson?" I said, "He's in the back seat with mom." He was like, "She's there too. What is going on?" And so my parents were divorced at the time, so he's like, "Put her on the phone." And so she said something happened, this and that, and she talked to him, and then he put me on the phone. He said, "Come home, bring my grandson home, come home." And he was very upset. We didn't tell my Uncle Bobby, who rest his soul now, but he had severe PTSD from Vietnam, and we knew he was going to go kill him, so we couldn't tell him why I was home. We came up with a lie.
See, there are a couple of things that questions rolling through my head, and I know that we have a series of questions to ask you and stuff, but there's a couple of things that go through my head. One, he filed for divorce, not you.
Mm-hmm.
She was working.
In retrospect, right? In retrospect, what is your thought on that?
He had the money at the time. I did have some
No,
money.
I understand. I
Mhm.
understand that component, that
Mhm.
economically you couldn't have afforded it.
Right.
But I'm talking about knowing that he did all these things and he is the person that terminated the marriage while you were fighting for something that he was the cause of. And like you're fighting for, and then he terminated. Because in my mind, what I'm hearing is that you, even through all of this craziness, because that's what I hear, right? I hear craziness, right? With all of this craziness, you're willing to go back. And a lot of men and women both, right, go back to their abusers and refuse to leave the situation. So therefore, in my mind, I have to ask the question that it's almost like you didn't want him to file for divorce. Why? What was the psyche? What was happening with you?
Well, I was still technically a newlywed. We were married maybe at this point 2 years, almost 2 years. I wanted my marriage to work because I believed in marriage. And I believed that, we could pray our way through and all. But the thing is you got to remember, domestic violence is physical, it's financial, it's emotional, it's mental. So if you really want to really get to somebody mentally, divorce them. If you want to really tackle somebody and take them down mentally, emotionally, and financially, terminate your rights, because that means no child support. So I have to take care of this kid without child support. I have to work. I have to do everything. He's not, held liable. So for the rest of this child's life, it's like financial abuse, because he's taken away that extra income in order to help this child.
This is the first time I've ever heard that if you terminate your rights to the child, you don't have to pay child.
Yep, you don't have to pay child support.
That's a very
Do
you know that, John?
Right,
Yeah, and it's in the paperwork. I keep the paperwork with me.
At that point, however, even though he abandoned,
your mic,
even though he abandoned, but there's still a question of whether or not you can get, support from the government,
Yeah, they, it didn't even say in there in the paperwork, because I've looked over it so many times. But it gets him off the hook. So for him, it's continued financial abuse. And then the divorce and everything, that's the mental and that's the emotional. I remember the day that I was served. We have a golf tournament here called the Masters Golf Tournament.
Yes.
Big tournament.
In Augusta.
Yeah, in Augusta. My sister and I had gone. We had badges for that Wednesday, which is a big day for the tournament. And we had gone, and my mom said, a deputy came to the door. The neighbors told me. And she said, brace yourself. You know what that might be. And I was like, man. So I just said, Dee Dee, face it. Head on. I called the number. The deputy left his card. I called him and I sat outside on the porch and waited for him. I knew what was happening. It was tough, but I said I had to face it. I had to face it. And he looked very remorseful. And, I used to work here. And I used to do the news for several years here. So people still recognized me. And I grew up here as well. And he recognized me and he, had a little small talk or whatnot. And I said, so I guess these are my divorce papers. And he said, yeah, I'm really sorry. But he felt bad.
I want to flip the script a little bit. And I want to, you've now obviously there's still some psychological effect from what happened. We
Mhm.
all would go through that. So tell us about some of the challenges that you have faced in your advocates, because now you understand what some of the psychological things that go through with people who live in abusive relationship and how to terminate that. And also one of the things that you recognize, and my parents just say something different when your ancestors were talking to you. They said when your ancestors are talking, that means you're going home to meet them.
Yeah.
That's what I hear. So I'm glad you heard it a little bit different, which is a good thing.
Well, I heard it both ways, but at that time when I heard a voice,
ready.
it was
You were not
it's
ready.
like,
Yeah, right.
You were not ready.
So
Yeah.
taking that now, you want to reach out to men and women both. What challenges have you faced in your advocacy about domestic violence and getting people out there to understand and talk about and discuss the topic?
the biggest challenge was making sure to include, well, no, that's not the biggest challenge, I would say, but I've learned to include both men and women because I've met men who have been victims of domestic violence. And I pulled some statistics for you. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence, i.e., beating, burning, strangling by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 1 in 18 men have been stalked by an intimate partner during their lifetime to the point in which they felt very fearful or believed that they or someone close to them would be harmed or killed. Now, these are statistics from the Centers for Disease Control. So I started looking up information years ago. Once men on my social media, they would say, what about us? We suffer as well. And then I started listening to their stories and I'm like, you're right. You are victims, but it's harder for, it's hard for any victim and survivor to speak, but it's even harder for a man because that chisels at their manhood. Like, how you gonna let a woman, beat up on you? How you gonna let a woman this and that? So I started including men. But the biggest challenge in my advocacy is how it's affected my son. My son's pretty tough. He's mentally sound. He's tough. But for the kids, I learned that the kids were taunting him about not having a daddy. And that hurt. And they were Black kids taunting him, his so-called friends. And he had mentioned it over the years when he was in elementary school. But recently I went through his phone because my thing is I own the phone. I bought the phone. I can go through it whenever I want to go through it. And he was taking a shower and I went to his photos, just flipping through, but I came across this video that was sort of odd. And he had taped a conversation between some boys at school about you don't have a daddy. And I heard your dad beat your mom. And I heard your father was sleeping with somebody else, sleeping with another woman. That sent me over the edge because it's like, here, my son has to hear this. And I said, why did you want to record this? He got so upset because I went through his phone. But then we talked about it and then the tears came. He says, I've been dealing with this for years, Mommy. And I said, I know you've mentioned it for years, but I don't even know what I thought all those other times. But I said, now to hear it, this really hurts. I said, why did you record it? He said, because I wanted proof, because they keep doing it. And I wanted some proof. And I said, were you going to turn this over to someone? He said, no, I was just going to hold on to it and to build my case. For my son to have to build a case, that sent me over the edge. So I talked to him. I said, with me speaking out, is that hurting you? He said, no, Mommy, because it's hard, but at least you're helping someone else live. And he said, if you speak out and somebody else can get out of that situation, then it's okay. I can handle what kids say. I'll just keep recording.
Wise young man.
I said, well, okay, that's pretty smart,
Wise.
And my mom, she was like, I just can't, she really internalized it. And I did for a minute. And I wrote an article about it, and a blog article rather, and I put it on Facebook or whatnot. But that just hurt me that in all of this, my child is the one who has to hear, you don't have a daddy. And, it's because Mommy did something to try to protect you.
Have you spoken to the school in regards to that?
I did. And I shared the video.
And what did they do? Did they provide counseling?
They did, and I it's my understanding that they spoke with the kids and their parents.
You know, I think it's more than that. I think there needs to be because you know what, abuse happened at young age, it happened at older age, whatever. But it's a teachable moment to break
Yes.
the cycle, and they should take that upon themselves, especially since it's happening in their school, a teachable
Right.
moment about abuse. So
Right.
maybe you should speak to them about, you know, putting that into
Right.
having a meeting overall with all schools about bullying. That's
Yes.
part of bullying, part of abuse, because now, you know, as you turn into teenager stage, that tends to happen too.
Right.
To break the cycle at a young age and
Mhm.
just using that as an opportunity to say, hey, you know what? We're going to stop with the chatter instead of just talking to those two kids. You don't know what other kids the other kids spoke to. So
Right. And also what the other kids are seeing at home. As I told my son, just because someone's mom and dad are together doesn't mean that they have utopia. They're not unicorns and rainbows. There could be problems every day. You just don't know about them. And the kids aren't going to tell you. But we are open and we're honest. So we will talk about it. And maybe we can help them see how brave we are. And they can be brave as well.
I
Mhm.
I have another question because you mentioned something that I knew already. Um but I think your upbringing and
Mhm.
your church background had a lot to do with you being a fighter to try to maintain the relationship that you had. Now looking back at it, what would you say to young ladies who had similar upbringing, similar to you? What would you say to them, thinking the same way that you do? How
You
would you?
don't have to you don't have to take it. You don't have to take it. No one deserves to be mistreated. Marriage was not created for anyone to be demeaned or treated poorly or whatnot. It's a partnership and there's love.
Mhm.
And there are compromises, but you don't have to compromise your safety. You
Right.
don't have to compromise your mental health, your mental well-being. You don't have to compromise your financial standing. And it's okay to walk away from that. It's not embarrassing. If I could look back and tell my person myself 10 years ago, it's
Mhm.
okay to walk away. You are the strongest person by walking away. You're not a weakling.
Yes, yes. Because you know what? You're a survivor. I actually grew up and I had someone that I used to look up to that passed away that
Mm.
actually got murdered by her fiance from abuse. You know, everybody's thinking. So the fact that you walk away, like you said,
Mhm.
is the strongest thing, the
Yeah,
best thing that you could do to
yeah,
help teach somebody else that no matter what, no matter church, no matter your parents' upbringing, no matter wanting to keep tradition,
no,
being alive is
mhm.
more important than
Yeah.
keeping that legacy going of unhealthy relationships.
Or the facade of the perfect family and the perfect relationship when the children, it's manifested in the children later on because boys who witness those kinds of toxic
Abuse. Mhm.
marriages and relationships, they tend to repeat the cycle.
Exactly.
And girls who witness it tend to repeat the cycle of being a victim because they think this is how you are loved. This is
Right.
how he shows his love. At
Right.
least he takes care of the family. And I don't want any, I would I would hate for my child to grow up in that, and then later on he becomes the abuser. So
So
I
that was the
protect.
best thing. The
Yeah,
ending, that
right.
cycle was
Yeah.
the best thing. Yes, financial, it's one thing, and it's
Mhm.
similar to people who get divorced or whatever. But sometimes it's the most healthiest situation that
Yeah,
comes out of everything because he
right.
doesn't have to see that
He
ever.
does not, yeah, because it happened in front of him at 5 weeks old. I did not want him to be 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, and seeing me slammed against the wall or
Right.
my head, I'm being punched or my stomach. I just didn't want him to see mommy being called the N word, all of that. I just didn't want that. I did not want that. And my kid is not perfect. I say that all the time. He gets in trouble a lot because I'm a hard mom, but I love him so much and he knows he's so loved and I only want the best for him. But I tell people my kid is far from perfect. He is the most imperfect child you could see. But one thing I can tell you, my kid is not cruel. You can never tell me my kid is cruel because he is not a cruel kid.
How
And
does
I get that from teachers. They all tell me that too. He's just such a loving, a kind kid. And that makes me beam from joy because I worked hard to get him out of that kind of environment.
How does
So I wanted to, in your bio, we noticed you emphasize the importance of saving both lives of men and women, right? So I want to go back. I think Mikhail asked a question, right? And so going back to, let's go back. Can you go back to Mikhail's question?
About do men
do you find that men open up less?
So talk while
They
you're talking
do.
about that, talk
Yeah.
about what are the statistics, right? What are the statistics when it comes about abuse?
Well, like I said, the 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. And then 1 in 25 men have been injured by an intimate partner. 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence, i.e. beating, burning, strangling by an intimate partner in their lifetime. And again, this is from the Centers for Disease Control statistics. But men open up less because they don't want to be seen as less of a man if somebody knows a woman has berated them or a woman has attacked them, a woman has hit them. So they will hold it in, they will keep quiet and just try to, suffer in silence, I guess. Same thing as women. It's the same thing. No one wants to admit that the man they love abuses them. And no one wants to admit that the woman they love abuses them. So it's the same thing. But no one wants to be the poster child of domestic violence. It's not a fun position. It's not.
My sister, God rest her soul, was an assistant district attorney here in New York City.
Wow.
And one of the she hated most, and I talk about it a lot, is she hated most being in the domestic violence division, because in the domestic violence division, there are no victimless crime. So everybody, there's a victim, right? So if I'm bringing up a charges, it's there's a question on the screen: do men open up as much or less? And do you find that? Well, it follows up with what you just spoke about. You kind of answered that already. They shared it, welcome by most people, and there are, especially black men. Black men, we hold things in, right? It's funny, like we hear our mothers yelling all the time, and we think it's okay, right? So because a lot of us grew up in single parents household where it's only the woman, right? It's not men and women, and so especially Black and West Indian women, we believe in the immortal belt, right? That's one of our fundamental beliefs. The belt will show you the right direction, and we don't do a lot of talking. Right, talking things through.
I don't believe in that.
No, I said, I didn't say all. Let's be clear. I'm not saying all, because I don't believe in the immortal belt either, right? So I'm not saying all men, but I'm just saying all Black and Caribbean. But it is, hit first, ask questions later. It's one of those things where I try to explain to people that because I hit you, it's not self-defense when you hit me back,
right?
It's actually fighting. So we teach each other abuse, right? And so to break that psychology of it is one thing. I'm going to make a statement. I usually say these controversial things, and to the chagrin of both my producers and Dr. Brian and
oh boy,
and John, you spoke on something, and people need to be, because you're in church, doesn't mean that everything is right with the members in the church.
Yeah,
because the church is just a building. Right? It's a building that people go to worship. And people are people, and sometimes they go to church to avoid the real them, right? Because like you said, you were abstinent, you gave up all of these different individuals, because there's no tree, from what I see, there's no tree growing in your face, right? That's an expression I don't know if it means the same thing for you guys, but mean that there's nothing wrong with you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I never heard that one.
Yeah, that's and it's just an expression we use. Right. It means that you're pretty,
Oh,
right?
thank you.
And so that means that, but so you spend the time to dedicate yourself to your marriage,
Mhm.
and then you felt like going to a church, finding somebody from church who is willing to go down that road with you,
Right.
right, was okay, was safe. And we do have that feeling. My father's a pastor,
Mhm.
so I do follow the concept that church, as a church member, your expected lifetime, your expected life goals and behavior, right? And so I just want to make sure that people are aware, know the person,
Right.
right? Know the person that
Mhm.
you're talking to, and the church does not make that person less abusive. And the school or a cop or your job, your title
Mhm.
does not make a person
Mm-mm.
different from any other. So when you hold people at high esteem, right? Let's get to know that person before you decide, because he's a pastor, because he's a teacher,
Mhm.
because he's a blank,
Mhm.
that makes that person okay. Because he's a construction worker, he's
Mhm.
not worth the time. That's
Mhm.
actually not 100% might not be true, but we
Right.
pigeonhole people. I want to move on to another
Wait,
question.
wait. Before you move to that, I want to add on to what you said.
Mhm.
Also, know the friends.
The
Learn
friends.
friends.
Yes.
Because I could say this for sure, and I could relate to you. If you don't know the friends, and the friends can't open up and be honest
Mhm.
about the individual, that's a problem. Family and friends who cannot be honest about who it is,
Right.
you know, that's where you should be concerned.
Well, also when I've learned too, and I've read this a lot since my divorce or whatnot. If the male or female talks badly about the last partner, the ex-wife or the whatever, that's a bad sign as well. And he talked badly about his first wife, and I always say I should have, been a big little woman and met her and really on friendly terms and listen to what she said. Now, she may have said some bad things about him, but later on I could say, you know what, she warned me. Or I could have taken heed to what she said and said, you know what, I'm not going to go down this road with him. I'm going to break up with him because she's warned me. But
maybe not, because
right,
it depends on how it ends. Because
exactly.
I don't think that whoever he plans on marrying right now will reach out to you, or he would say,
Oh,
hey,
no.
reach out. Exactly. So it depends on how that situation and it depends on, hey, not too many times you're receptive to hear the past.
Right.
You leave the past in the past. So you
Right.
have a new experience altogether. So I can understand and relate to you in regards to that.
Because I always say,
Most times they say when you go on date, don't talk about your past relationship. So
right, but
so therefore,
right.
you
And
have,
also,
although
if they talk badly about them, then that's a bad sign, because it's like you're putting the onus on that person so much, but you're not saying what was your fault. And so for me, I know what was my fault. I gave my all. I gave up myself. And I learned that you don't give up yourself in a relationship, because I was giving it all.
I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if I agree with that.
I
I'm gonna tell you why I disagree. I'm gonna be honest with you, tell you why I disagree.
Yourself. That's
right.
I
I
think
lost myself.
everything.
I think it's about uneven yoke, right? I think that's where I would take that comment, right? Because your all might not be good, but let me not say good enough. Your all might not be the expectation of an all. So you might think you're doing something. I might think I'm doing something when I'm really not. Because cultural, what I'm saying is like, so for example, cultural.
You can think unevenly yoked if you're coming from the same church.
Right.
So that's the thing. That's where the misconception that what you said earlier, Roderick, applies. Because here it is, you meet somebody in church, you're figuring, hey, we're going to the same church, and this person is, singing over here or volunteering over here or deacon over here or whatever. You are thinking that you're not unequally yoked. You think
exactly. And then I think that's where the psychology of the person plays. That Creflo Dollar, I remember
The video.
the video from Creflo Dollar,
Uh-huh.
and
You need to see the person get angry. You
Yep.
need to see how they
yep,
react.
that video,
to
that video,
So
that
true.
resonated with me.
Uh-huh.
I
That
want to
is
see
true.
what you're like in a tough situation. I want to
Right.
see what your finances are like. I want to see this. Well,
Wasn't
tell
he
me
one
about blah blah blah.
He said also you should see a person in 4 seasons, didn't he, or something like that?
I
In
don't
every
remember. I don't
season,
remember
like-
all of the questions, but I remember. I remember. Get him
Anger.
mad. Get him mad.
Anger.
Yes.
And the
I
more
don't want to get anybody mad, but I'll be around when you mad. It's something else.
No. Because here's okay. So here's my thing. I get upset. I get very upset. I get very upset with my wife.
Mhm.
Very upset. Right? She gets very upset with me. There's no fighting in my house. There's no cursing in my house. We talk whatever we want to talk, but she doesn't curse at me. I don't curse at her.
That's
We
good.
don't put our hands on each other.
Good.
None of that things happen in my house. So even when I am angry or she is angry, I think to the extent that does make me upset is her hanging up the phone.
But there are boundaries.
Right. But there,
There are boundaries.
so therefore, why I believe in that conversation. That's why I think it's important that we ask. It's
what about people who don't like to argue? Who don't like
Right.
to
I don't like to
I'm
argue.
not
I want somebody to argue. I do want you to argue.
confrontational, so I don't
Right.
like to argue.
I don't like to
No,
argue.
I want you to argue because, like you're saying, you gave all of yourself. When you're arguing with me, now I'm not talking about anger. I'm not talking about violent arguing. I'm talking about positive conversation. Like if you're upset about something, I
Mhm.
want to know that I don't want you to be silent. That you didn't
Oh, we're gonna
like.
have a conversation.
Right. Like I don't want you. You know what? I didn't take out the garbage, and I'm supposed to take out the garbage, and I didn't take it out, and I kept letting the garbage go over. I want you to know, because maybe I might not value that like you value, like
Right.
you know,
It
like
irritates
you don't want no damn roaches in the house, no rodents, no this. Take out the garbage.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about you
Yelling,
being
screaming.
right. I don't like that. Although I do find myself doing that sometimes.
Right.
So let's continue a little bit about somebody had asked me today, because when I sent out the invitation for people to join us,
Mhm.
somebody asked me about do you work with organizations that help domestic violence?
Yeah.
What are some of those organizations? And if somebody wanted to, because she was telling me that she had some stuff. I was actually at the doctor's office and she was one of the persons there. And she's telling me that she has some stuff that she would like to donate, right?
Oh, wow.
How would she reach you, or what would you suggest for her to do?
I'm in Georgia and I work with a lot of organizations down here. I've also worked with the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, NCADV, and we did something at the Oculus at the World Trade Centers right before COVID. So I work with that national organization, but you can find organizations and shelters online. Here it's Safe Homes of Augusta, and then we have the Cumbie Center over on the South Carolina side, which is right across the river. But I work with various organizations. I was just given an award by the Georgia Commission on Family Violence 2-3 weeks ago. It was for responsible coverage, because I've done a lot of stories and series on domestic violence. So I work with a lot of different agencies to get the word out about domestic violence and how people can be helped and getting out of the situation and what it looks like or whatnot. But yeah, she can, if she wants to, she can go on my station's website, wjbf.com, and find my information, or she can find shelters in her area, as well as the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, ncadv.org, I believe it is. That's a good way to reach out and say, hey, I want to donate.
You mentioned something that just as you were speaking, it just hit me. What about people who don't have family and friends that's near?
And that's a good question I think about all the time, because I'm very blessed that I have a sister and mom who could get to me. But so many people don't have that. I would love for there to be a collaboration between airlines and even Amtrak, railways or whatnot, to come up with a way, a clearinghouse of sorts with domestic violence shelters from around the country, to seek out opportunities to help victims who need to get away. Bona fide victims, not somebody saying, oh, if I fake being a domestic violence victim, I can get a free ticket to California. No, they have to have a police report. They have to go through several different, they have to check different boxes. And then they would be given a free flight for them and their children to get out. Also, the thing is too, you have to have a police report, because I could have been charged with kidnapping for taking my son out of state, across state lines, but I had that police report. So a lot of victims don't want to call the police, or if they call the police and they have to go to court, they'll drop the case or whatever, they'll drop the charges. Don't do that, because when it happens and it gets so bad and your life is on the line, people are going to say, well, she kept dropping the charges, or he kept dropping the charges, or, you know, the person wouldn't file any charges. But I think that if we could get a coalition of transportation hubs to give flights or bus fares or train tickets to victims to get to their family one way, not a two-way, but a one-way, that would help solve the problem as well.
In addition, can you repeat the website again, please?
For NCADV, I believe it's .org. I have to look that up, but NCADV.org. Yep. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Awesome organization. And I've worked with them, and they are phenomenal.
You know, you also mentioned, I'm thinking about mothers who the dad is the caregiver. And if they're not working and they don't have family close, what would be one of the steps? If they call the police and say, hey, you know what, I'm being abused, but some people drop the case, because guess what? They don't have any way of providing for themselves. What are some ways to deal with that? What would you say to someone who's an immigrant, who don't have papers? What would you say? And this happened often. What would you say to those individuals?
The threat of deportation.
Right.
That's actually a big deal.
There are shelters out there, especially up north, because you have more immigrants in those cities, shelter states, Texas, in Florida. But there are shelters that are open, domestic violence shelters, to help people. And you just have to seek out the opportunities, and you have to be serious. That's the thing too. You can't just teeter back and forth. You have to be willing to go, because
I think it's fear. I don't think it's teeter.
It's fear.
It's fear, because the thing is, you're giving up something if you don't have anything to go to.
Right.
What do you do? And when you're young, or if it's like a hopeless situation.
Right.
Sometimes females, mothers and parents or dads or whatever, feel hopeless when they're in a domestic
violence situation.
Talk about
the first time.
I want you to talk about the importance of community outreach, right? Why, because people hearing, I'm flipping the script now from the victims, right, to people like yourself and myself, right, to Dr. Bryant and the Village Talk Show, News 6. Why is community outreach so important that it's not, so we should not remain silent, right? We should not remain silent. We should talk about domestic violence.
Right.
Why? Because, sometimes a victim doesn't think that he or she needs to talk about it.
Right.
But why is it so important, the work that you're doing and that I am doing, that the Village Radio Talk Show is doing, and that you're doing as well?
Because the microphone has power. The microphone has power. And you can fight so many wrongs with one simple microphone, because so many people will hear you. You can speak to one person face to face, but when you get that microphone, you're speaking to thousands of people, possibly hundreds of thousands of people. There's power in that microphone. And I always say, when you have a microphone in front of you, on you, wherever, you have to be careful, because you are given a certain responsibility.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's when I thought, I needed a job. My son, I stayed home with him and depleted all of my savings, but I was home with him 15 months, which was a blessing. But also I needed to work. I had gone through all of my money trying to take care of him. But my ex-husband was sporadically, before our divorce, he was not sending money consistently, all of this. And so I came here with my baby in the stroller, in his little carriage, and in pushing it in and talking to the general manager. I needed a job. So he hired me on part-time. And I realized then that, I did a story about a victim of domestic violence, a crime had happened. And I realized then it's my duty. I'm here because I have a voice and I have a microphone. If I'm given this opportunity, then I need to use it to help, because people will see somebody else and say, oh, I heard Ann down the street, her husband beat her up or whatever, and they won't think anything of it. Meanwhile, they're at home getting punched themselves. But if they see Dee Griffin on the TV, she got out of it, or she says domestic violence is wrong, then I'm going to take heed. I'm going to look at somebody who's on TV who says it. If she dealt with it and she got out, maybe I can too.
I'm sorry, Menace de Grot. I'm not sure what's I don't know if you know what this is, D.
Sankofa
elders pre-wedding rituals. I think when we were talking about Creflo
Yeah.
Dollar, the person brought this
Oh,
up.
okay.
I'm not sure what that is, but if you want to explain it, not a problem. Thank you for the comment.
And if you want to call in to speak to our guests, you can call in at 718-841-9980. Again, 718-841-9980 if you'd like to speak to our guest this evening. How does your son feel with you being on TV? That's one thing.
It doesn't faze him anymore. It does not. He has he's grown up at this TV station. He comes in and it doesn't faze him. He knows how to write. He's a great writer. He is, and everyone says that he's an incredible writer. He thinks he's an artist. He likes to draw, but his ministry, his strength, writing, because he's watched me write so much. And so he grew up here at the station and he knows how to do things and edited and all that. Everybody just knows Pierce. He just comes in like, hey, or he doesn't even speak. He walks straight through to the conference room. Mommy's on air. He has, when he was little, he would, if I didn't have anyone to watch him, I'd have to bring him to work when I work nights, and he would be sitting under the desk on his Nintendo Switch or his iPad while I'm doing the news. So he's grown up around it. He thinks absolutely nothing of it. However, as my mom pointed out, he's obviously watching and listening, because if he had the wherewithal to use his phone to record the kids' conversations, she says that little boy has journalism in him.
Yes, he does. That was very genius.
Yeah. And he's been on stories with me. If there's breaking news, I think one night we were out to dinner and there was a fire, and I took my cell phone and I got video, and I did a Facebook Live on my professional Facebook page, and he was right there, and I had to move because he was looking in the video. And so
I try to take. It's funny. I do try to take my son out. Let me just segue to. We have a commercial real fast. Give me 1 second. I'm sure you're used to that.
Gotta pay bills.
This is the single parent. We are sponsored by the Single Parent University.
Nice.
We have open admission going on. We have course curriculum, personal development, mindful parenting, support seminar, financial management, nutrition, and wellness. Also note that they will provide you with free session childcare, transportation, social support hub, resume, cover letter, career exploration, legal assistant. Call 646-779-6767 or text SBU to 714-441. Please join the Single Parent University.
And what better way to segue into that, because those who need a way out can reach out to the Single Parents University.
All
That
right.
is so awesome. Single Parent University. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That is phenomenal.
Yeah. The problem is that we don't have a lot of people want to utilize something as I think that's why it's important when I say why is it important for on this side of the camera to have a conversation.
Right.
Personal question. Well, two personal questions. Personal question number one is, what is your interaction like with your ex-husband now? Has he ever apologized without moving on?
I was thinking the same thing.
No.
He has never called.
No communication.
And I have the same phone number I've had for almost 20 years, maybe now.
That's okay. You're not missing anything.
No, I'm not.
I don't think I was asking on the terms of whether she's missing something or not. But
Right.
sometimes, hey, you have had all of these. Your son is now 11. You left when he was about 1.
5 weeks. Yeah.
Right, 5 weeks. So now it's 10 years plus. So which kind of lends me to say, hey, is he significantly older than you? What, like same age?
No, he was 4 years younger than me. But I kept the same phone number, kept the same email address, because I never wanted my son to grow up and think mommy kept me from my dad. My dad could have come back, but mom, and my child, again, he's a sweet kid, so he wouldn't do that. However, I never wanted to be the one who kept my ex-husband out of our son's life if he had an awakening and all of a sudden said, I want to be in my son's life. So I never changed my contact information. Also, I work at a TV station. You know how to find me. But, no, he has never reached out. He married the woman he was cheating with, and they have a family. He took on her daughter, from what I understand. So he's the doting, loving father husband, which is fine. But still,
Wait, let's stand corrected.
Yes.
Because we don't know if she's a victim of domestic violence.
Well, I like to think I saved her life because I speak out. I'm protecting her as well because all eyes are on
Is
him.
she listening though?
Well, not about her.
Is she hearing?
No. He's the kind who wants to prove me wrong. So he's being a great husband to her. And
10 years later?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but Andre's in the background asking me this question. How the heck do you know? He keeps asking me
I
this.
didn't ask like that.
Well, let's just say
I guess I'm curious too. I'm curious.
let's just say I have spoken out enough where a lot of people have their eyes on them. And he's being the loving, kind, doting husband. And I protected her because he wants to prove me wrong.
And caller, you live?
Background.
Huh?
Yes, caller, you live.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, this is Menez.
How you doing, Menez? How you doing?
Good. In regards to the tradition, one of the most important things that we have lost in terms of relationship is the fact that we no longer sit with our elders before making those critical decisions in relationship. Our elders would have had to sign off on the relationship.
My dad did.
Before,
That's the thing. Yeah.
He called my father and my mother and my sister to ask for my hand in marriage.
Yeah. So
yeah, but in our tradition, what the elders would have done, they would have checked out his background.
Yeah.
Checked out not only his background, but his family background before they would have given their permission to do so.
I think
how we did it.
I think, Menace, I get what your point is. I think you see, me personally, I believe in arranged marriages. Not that I'm going to do
I
it.
do too. I
But
do
I
too.
believe, and what happened, I think what Menace is saying, Menace, correct me if I'm misunderstanding, right? I think he's saying that your parents, your family, and his family getting together to have the conversation about the expectation of the relationship.
I agree.
Is she a good mother? Is she this? Is he a
Right.
good husband? Is he a good provider?
But
Those-
wait.
I sound like a sexist. Is he
But
a
let
good
me ask
provider?
you, if the person was not and he was a cheat, do you think his family would say, "Oh no, he's
Right.
a cheat"?
Yeah,
But-
because
wait. But you know what though?
Or abusive.
I have to agree with Menace. When my sister was dating before she got married, right? My sister never liked for me to speak to her boyfriends because she knew that
Okay.
I had a conversation. Like Menace is right. I had a conversation. If you mess with my sister, and I get that phone call from my sister that
Correct.
you were an abusive husband, I will come for you.
For you. There you
Right.
go.
I think that's what you're talking about, Menace.
That-
So,
that-
so
that can-
and then
that-
and then you I was serious. I was dead to
Sure.
dead to my sister. You mess with my sister, I'm gonna beat you.
Well, when I went out on my first date when I was 16, my dad, who, like I said, he was retired military, he conveniently was cleaning out all of his guns. And when I started talking about domestic violence and all this, and then my dad died in 2015, and I put it on social media, and the guys that I had dated in high school and went to, they all were saying, you know what we remember about your dad? When we used to come get you, your dad would have all these guns laid out, all at 5:00 in the afternoon.
The message.
And that was the message. And so my
Yes.
dad internalized what happened to me, and it took him down mentally, because he would tell me all the time, he says, what happened to you bothered me, Dee Dee, because everything was army to him. He said the enemy infiltrated the troops, and he said, I gave this guy, his permission. I walked you down the aisle to a monster. My dad had on his military blues, his medal, his Purple Heart, everything. He had his military gloves, everything, his hat, to walk me down the aisle, and he walked me down the aisle to a monster, and he internalized that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
There's no knowing that. That's
There's no knowing that. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, and thank you, Menace, for that
Thank
call.
you. Yeah.
Thank you for calling in on the Village Talk Show. All right, Menace.
Thank you so much, Menace.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, and I think in looking back, right? In looking back, my sister never called me for those things. She never did. If those things were happening, she never called, because and the guys, they would never, because I'm not playing with myself. I was not playing, like,
Right. And that's understandable. Yeah.
because that is my sister.
Right.
Dee, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story and being here. Being here with us. Can you just give us that contact one more time? If somebody want to reach out to you, if they feel comfortable with asking you a question. You said to look you up on
WJBF.com. WJ as in John, B as in boy, F as in Frank.com.
all right.
Yes.
And do you have an Instagram or anything?
I do. On Instagram, it's I am definitely D on TV. I think it is. Yeah. I am definitely D on TV.
I am. Let me do it now.
Let's see. I have to always look it up.
Me too. Yeah, I thought I was the only one.
No,
I have to ask Andre. So mine is Rod F Daly, the underscore the village underscore. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely
There you
D on TV. That's it. Definitely
I
D
am
on.
Definitely D on
definitely.
TV.
Yep.
Is that DEE or D? The letter?
DEE.
All right,
DEE
definitely DEE.
on
You found
TV.
it?
Wow, what a long Instagram name.
I know.
Somebody probably told you that.
I didn't find you. What is
You
going on?
can't.
Yeah, all right. I'm gonna look it up on my Instagram.
Yeah,
right now.
definitely DEE on TV.
So definitely
Is that it on screen?
is that it on screen?
That's it on the screen.
All right, so let me look it up. Definitely.
Okay, because I have put I am. That's what I have put.
That used to be it. It used to be, and then everybody started to do the I am thing, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore.
Definitely
Everybody was doing
D
it.
on
Okay, I got you.
D. This is just too damn long. All right, change it.
I know. And I gotta come up with something, maybe DEE on TV. I don't know.
All right, so you should get a follow from look at your Instagram. You got to follow from me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. I
I
think like I said, I think mine is Rod F Daly underscore the village.
And mine
Okay.
is
Something like that. I don't know. I don't know. All
Ah,
right. So we do appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to meet with you.
Thank you all.
Please do the tour. Get around. Let everybody know that domestic violence, one, it's not just about the woman, it's also about the men.
Yeah.
Two, you don't have to remain a victim, because you can remain a victim and get to 6'6", which is not what you want to get.
No, and too many people have lost their lives. You know, and I know you have to go, but 3 weeks after I arrived back home, there was a woman in Atlanta who I did not know, but we had mutual friends in Tennessee. We were sorority sisters and everything, but she was killed by her estranged husband. And, you know, he tricked her into coming to their condo to check on one of the children who allegedly had an asthma attack. And she came over to check on the child, and he killed her.
Wow.
And so that was, you know, I'll never forget her. And when I do my talks, I always think about her, because that could have been me. That could have been me.
You know, about a year and a half ago, we had a guest whose father killed her mother in the presence of all of her children. When you talk about domestic violence, and I'm here in New York. I'm a locally representative here in Brooklyn, where I live, and I work hand in hand with the precinct on issues a lot. And you know, some of the stories, if we had time, if we had time for me to tell you some of these stories that have happened, it's just ridiculous. Husbands beaten. I had one situation where, and that's why I talk about the men a lot.
Yeah.
We had a story where the woman took off her pumps. She sat on the guy, and she used her pumps and impaled him right through the chest and killed him.
Oh,
Right in the middle of the street.
Wow.
Not good.
We talk about, you know, because a lot of times men, you don't hit women, you don't do this, you don't do that, and he lost his life. Trust me, I hear it all. You know, hot water, the pot, the kettle, the oil, throwing on somebody. Trust me, it's tough. You know, and you know,
it's not right.
You know,
It's not. Two wrongs don't make a right. You know, and if you find yourself resorting to violence or degrading someone, calling someone names, cussing them out, leave yourself. Don't ever let anyone take you to that level. You know, don't ever do it. And you know, that's problematic when you get to that point where you're calling each other. Love doesn't hurt. Real love doesn't hurt.
Say that again.
Real love doesn't.
That was my second question. Have you been so traumatized by relationship that you have not had started new one? I wanted to ask. That was the other personal question I wanted to ask. That's what I wanted to ask.
You know, it's interesting. I have not dated because I'm so focused on my son and my career, and you know, and let's just say this: when I met my ex-husband, I was up here, especially financially. I'm still not where I focused on that more so. I was in a great TV market, all of that, and so I'm still building. So I finally went out on some dates this summer, and I'm dating.
Listen. Yeah, I have advice for you. I have two advice.
Please do. Yes.
One, make sure you try the goods before you walk down that aisle. Try the goods.
Oh my.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'm just telling you.
Lord have
I'm telling you.
My.
And two, make sure that you spend like a 2-week interval. See how he is around your son.
Yeah.
Because if that's somebody who you plan to stay with, you have to see how they interact together.
Yeah, and it's the sweet spot there. When do you introduce him to the son? Because I did introduce
5
my
months.
son. How many?
5 months.
That's good. That's good. I did after a couple months introduce my son to one guy. And
What number did I tell you?
You said 5, and I respect that.
I'm going to tell you why it's 5 months.
Yeah.
5 months because you're long enough in the relationship to have an idea of if it's somebody who you want to get serious with, you want to move forward with. If you're still playing games, dating somebody for 5 months, then that person has to go.
I wish I had talked to you a month ago because I did introduce my son, and my son liked this person and really had his high hopes. And then the guy pulled away from me, and I don't know why. It wasn't anything I did. I do know that. And so my son saw it as, gosh, another black man disappointed you.
Mhm.
And I was
And
like, no.
make sure one of the conversation is
Mhm.
family.
Yes, yes.
So one
And
of the
that's we've
conversation-
had those conversations. So I thought it was safe, but I told my son, I said that doesn't mean that another black man disappointed me. It just, maybe he lost interest or whatever, and that's not our problem. That's not my problem. It's not your problem. Because he said,
Yeah.
well, was it something I did? I said, no. People pull away, blah blah blah. And so
various
but
reasons.
5 months is good. I'm going to take your advice on that.
Okay, so that's the number.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you all for
Thank you
watching
for
us, listening to us right here on the Village Radio Talk Show. Make sure you share, subscribe, and continue listening. We see you each and every Thursday right here on this week's topic, domestic violence, what's the like and the impact. You can always go back and rewatch the show on
Yeah.
the Village Radio Talk Show on YouTube. For each and every one of you, all of our villagers out there, all of you tune in, I want to thank you and God bless. Have a great Thursday. And anybody who I forgot to say happy birthdays. I forgot. Don't look at me like
Everybody in
right, happy birthday. Right, everybody. Deirdre, happy birthday tomorrow. Tomorrow's your birthday. So I want to make sure I tell you happy birthday in case I forget. Good evening, every one of you. God bless. See you next Thursday.
and be safe.
And be safe.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us, Miss T.
Thank y'all for having me. Thank you so much. This was awesome. Y'all have a great show, and I really appreciate all of your work to helping people better understand this and realize they can get out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for surviving and keep pushing.
Thank
The
you.
power of the mic.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, the power of the mic is powerful.
Yes, it
And
is.
y'all keep on using it. Take care and God bless. Bye-bye.